Hope everybody's doing well. As y'all can tell, I'm coming at you from the Hayti Heritage Center, as I do sometimes if I'm doing these shows. And today is actually a quiet day here, even though I was across the street earlier and ran into a gentleman from Alabama and all along those lines. I think we're going to be doing one of those candlelight concerts, not this Thursday, but next Thursday. And of course, there will be the kids coming back to the summer camp on this weekend and a number of other things. But I did run across a gentleman, since right across from the Hayti is a Walgreens, and I noticed his Alabama shirt. I'm sure you might have noticed my Marquette shirt and all along those lines, but I knew that there were Alabama fans that were disappointed. So I was asking him about his reflections on that game, and he was saying that he wished that they had actually gone on defense first instead of going on offense first. I guess he was feeling that they might have had a better chance if that is what they had did in that particular case. But that is not what they chose to do, and instead it'll be Washington against definitely Michigan in that final game and all along those lines. So definitely that is the way that things went in that space. And he was also saying that the snap wasn't a great snap either. So there were a couple of plays that he wished it could have been done differently. And I'm sure there are some people that were not happy with certain play calls and maybe even certain refereeing calls, because I know there were a couple of basketball games that definitely had some controversial calls, and definitely some NFL games that had some controversial calls. I'm thinking about that one that involved, I believe it was Detroit and a number of other folks as well. So definitely it'll be interesting to see what happens in that world as we're getting ready to get into the height of the sports season. Because I know that I have been definitely following my alma mater, which is doing good, it's still in the top 10, if I'm remembering correctly. And all along those lines, that being Marquette under the leadership of Shaka Smart. And of course, there are a number of other folks that are paying attention to the football playoffs. My team has been way out of it. Both the team here in Carolina that couldn't buy a win this year. Now maybe Catherine Giovanni, who is one of the guests, and possibly we'll see if she's the only guest, if the other guest comes along as well. But I know she's based here in North Carolina. But yeah, our Panthers were having a hard time this year. I think they were able to get 2 wins. And my other team that I've been a long time fan of, the Minnesota Vikings, they are definitely right now they're on the outside looking in, and they need to win their last game and also have a whole lot of things fall correctly in order for them to slip into the playoffs. And it would literally be slipping into the playoffs, as they lost that game against Green Bay and lost it very handily. But I know a lot of people are also thinking about what the new year will bring them in terms of their health and wellness, and also in terms of their finances and all along those lines. And of course, it's a new year. And of course, there are people that will be concerned about their health journeys, because one of the typical New Year's resolutions is to do better on that health journey and to do better with exercise. And I guess that means I've got to stop ordering DoorDash, even though I'm thinking right now I might have to go out and get another DoorDash order later on today, and maybe even get out and do some exercising, which I have not been doing nearly enough of in life, just in general. But I've also been joking, even on this network, that I'm going to shoot for 200, and I'm about to hit the big 6'2" in July 1st of this year. So about the middle of this year, I'll be hitting the big 6'2" and all in that space. So like I said, I've jokingly said I'm going for 200, unless you go by some of the biblical characters or other characters that might have some other kind of history, or maybe even perceived history, if they are from the fables and everything. Nobody has made it, and I doubt very seriously that I will make it either. But isn't part of the ultimate goal in order to achieve these things is belief and having a positive attitude? At least that's how I've always been taught, and all along those journeys. And sometimes you also have to learn that notion of forgiveness, which can be a very difficult thing, and all along those lines. And we're going to bring Kathy in, and she's going to share a little bit about what she's got going on in that space and a number of other things as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to this conversation, because one of my dear friends that I've been knowing for years is a breast cancer survivor. And I know that Catherine is a breast cancer survivor as well. So yeah, one of my friends in the music community has definitely been fighting that battle. I think she's been in remission for a number of years. That being my friend Sharon Allen, and I know others that have been fighting that for quite a while. But I'll bring Catherine in and learn more about what she's got going on, and just that whole notion of forgiveness, and also a little bit about her book, and also a little bit about what she went through. And as you say in your bios, and I know you've been on a number of great media outlets, including Nightline and Good Morning America, and of course being featured in the Time magazines and Forbes. But I did see that you are a proud breast cancer survivor, and like I said, I do know a few folks that have dealt with that, and it is definitely something that is something that I know you women are concerned about. But as I understand it, it isn't just strictly a women's ailment. There are men, then maybe not as many, but there are men that have breast cancer as well. So I wonder if you would just start off there, if you can share a little bit about that part of your journey, and then I definitely want to hear your thoughts around forgiveness, and I also want to learn more about your business as a concierge as well.
Well, thank you for having me on, Mark. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, was it at what point did you find out that you were involved in this, and is it part of what you do in terms of even discovering your own power? Because I do know some people then they are facing adversity, whatever that adversity is. That is oftentimes when they find their true calling and their true gift and everything. Or did you always knew that you were going to be a person that knew your power at a young age?
I had glimpses of it. I grew up I had a dysfunctional childhood and, that kind of stuff. And so it kind of teaches you to be strong, so to
Right.
speak. And then it taught me to be angry
Hmm.
because, in the eighth grade, my parents got divorced and I was being bullied in school and I tried to commit suicide. So when I had a friend who pulled me out, as hopefully everybody does, but it turned me into this little angry ball of garbage. And I kind of stayed angry for a very, very long time. 3 years before my mother died, she got sober and we became really good friends. And then she died. And once she died, my brain snapped, and I thought, I can't continue my life angry. I'm sick all the time. My finances are horrible. I'm always whining and complaining. I'm getting every flu bug. So I decided to change my life and I started to forgive people. And it worked. I didn't really dive too heavily into it. It worked pretty well. I'm one of the founders of the independent concierge industry. So my intuition kind of guided me through, and I blazed trail, and then I got cancer.
Wow.
And one day, I am violently allergic to exercise.
Hmm.
When you see the word exercise in the dictionary, my name is usually not there.
Okay.
So it was very surprising when all of a sudden I had this gut feeling. We all get these gut feelings. I had this gut feeling that I needed to take up running, me, but I couldn't get it out of my head. So a friend of mine said, try the Couch to 5K running program. This was in 2011.
Wow.
So I did, started to run, didn't mind it, went from a size 14 down to an 8, and it was close to my birthday in May, and I knew something was wrong. The weight was coming off too fast. And sure enough, the day before my birthday, in 1990, I found a lump.
Oh, wow.
Went to the doctor, and it was very large, stage 3 triple positive breast cancer. And the surgeon said if I hadn't taken up running, I would be dead because it was in a very strange spot. So we can't, my advice is twofold when it comes to these kinds of things. First of all, don't that little bird on your shoulder ever,
Mhm.
because it has saved my life 3 times. Not that I'm counting particularly. And the other thing is we can't control what life throws at us. I can't control the fact that I got cancer, but I can
Right.
control how I get through it. And I was sick for 4 years with chemo and surgery and the whole thing. So they send you to chemo class.
Right.
True story. Yep. Chemo class. I'm in this tiny little room, very similar to the one you're in now.
Mhm.
And this nurse Ratchet sits at the front of the room, and all she tells you is negative stuff. You're going to get all of these horrible side effects, and you're going to have all these horrible things happen to you. And my brain just snapped. And I went up to the front of the class. I looked her right in the eye and I said, no, I'm not going to get all of that. She said, oh, honey, it was in Raleigh, North
Mhm.
Carolina. Oh, honey, you're going to get most of them. I said, no, I'm not. Fast forward a year, I was sick as a dog, lost my hair, the whole thing. But I didn't get all the side effects. I didn't get all the stuff that other people got. She came up to me and she said, "What are you eating?" I said, "Pardon?" She said, "What are you doing to stay as healthy as you are with all the horrible chemo you're getting?" I looked at her and I said, "You remember a year ago when I told you I wasn't going to get that sick?"
Right.
It's your perspective. It's how you get through it. So forgiveness plays a huge role in how I got through it as well.
Oh, and a couple of things that you were saying that struck me and everything. I know that we have a panelist on the network who is getting ready to do the prostate test, and I know a lot of people get concerned about the prostate test and they get apprehensions, just like I know a lot of people get apprehensions about the breast cancer exams and all
Mhm.
along those lines. So, what do you say to those folks that are apprehensive about going for testing? Because I do know that once you reach certain ages, they are asking you to get various tests. For men, it is prostate and colon and a number of other things as well. And I know for women, they do ask for the mammogram and a number of other things. But, as a society, we oftentimes are not the biggest fans because of that description you just gave of our doctors and our medical establishment, because we are often afraid that we're going to run into the Miss Ratchets or those folks that are a little bit on the don't have the best manners in terms of the way that they handle their patients and all along those lines. So what advice do you give to folks that are apprehensive about going in for whatever the test may be?
Don't die until you're dead.
Hmm.
I know people who have survived stage 4 cancer.
Right.
I know people who survived all sorts of things.
Mhm.
The one thing I can tell you is cancer, it's an interesting thing and it's a horrible way to live.
Right.
But when you survive it, it changes you. And I've often been known to say it's probably one of the best things that could have happened to me because it completely put me on a different path. It knocks you on your feet, it knocks you down. And when you stand up, you are on a different path. Because when you have dinner with the Grim Reaper and you don't go home with the guy,
Mhm.
it changes you. I'm 62, and the fact that I'm 62 and talking to you is wonderful.
Right.
One of the books I wrote, I've written a bunch of books, I think 12, but one of the books I wrote is called Rainbows and Banana Peels, and I wrote it on my cell phone when I was in chemo because I was bored. But the book, it changes you. Cancer is a journey. And the one thing I can tell to people is don't listen to very well-meaning people.
Right.
I had somebody come up to me in the grocery store and said, "Oh, how much time do you have left?" 50 years, I hope, lady. I mean, don't go up to people and say that. But when you hear the C word, your brain kind of stops. So it's very helpful to have a buddy when you go through this. I had my husband of 30 years, to have somebody who can get through it with you and stay positive. Being positive is easy for me to say, but it's not a day-to-day thing. When you're going through chemotherapy, when you're going through cancer, it's a minute-by-minute choice that you have to make. And don't, when your brain goes to the dark side, try and pull yourself back. That's how I got through it. I had to keep my brain positive, and I knew deep in my heart it wasn't going to kill me, and it didn't.
Now, along those same lines, I think that even if you get what some people would consider a death sentence, that if you have a positive attitude or a positive outlook, that
Yep.
you can oftentimes live past what people are expecting you to. Because I do know that both me and my dad had a dear friend that was involved in the art community here in Durham, and they were diagnosed with a terminal illness, and they have definitely passed on. But they
Yep.
they lived their life past that deadline that the terminal illness was supposed to give them. Because I think they were told that they had like maybe a month or two to live and everything. And I want to say that they lived at least a few years past that terminal diagnosis. And I want to say that part of the reason that Michelle was able to get past that is that she had a very positive outlook, and she also had
Yep.
somebody in her family, because I think that she had been remarried, so she had a husband that was very supportive as well. So just wondering, how important is it for you to have that support system? Because one of our founders here on the network, they recently lost, on that being Kim Calhoun, their husband, I think about a year or two ago, and all along those lines. But that was the love of her life, and definitely somebody that she knew at a very young age. I want to say as far back as their high school days, if not their college days. But definitely you can see that even when she talks about that ex, she still has that very positive viewpoint of their relationship and everything. So how important is that support network to have, particularly among your significant other and maybe even kids and others?
To have my husband and two sons support me is really what got me through. But to play devil's advocate, I had a bunch of jackrabbits in my life. I had really, really, really close friends who took off when I said I had breast cancer, and I've never heard from them again.
Well,
They're just gone. I had family, I had friends, I had a bunch of people scattered like jackrabbits. But I had my husband and my sons. My husband has come to every surgery, every doctor's appointment, and he still comes with me all the time. He came to absolutely everything for what am I, 12 years cancer free, something like that. So yeah, it's very important to have somebody that you can rely on, but don't get too upset when the jackrabbits leave, because not everybody can take a diagnosis like this, and they're leaving because I wondered if they thought I was contagious. I really did. But I think they look at you and say, well, she can get it, so can I. And they run because they can't handle it. So just let them go. They weren't meant to be in your life. Forgive them and let them go.
Well, speaking of forgiveness, you had mentioned earlier some of your own past history and even family history and everything. And I know that sometimes I am a similar age, like I said, 61, be 62 in July, and all along those lines. And I know that for whatever reasons, I have not had that significant other in terms of marriage, but I've had folks that I have dated, including for long periods of time and everything. But sometimes if relationships go south, then you sometimes have to do that whole forgiveness thing. And sometimes they are bringing baggage in from past relationships as well. I know that one of your books is that forgiveness journey and everything. So I was wondering, why did you write the book? And do you think that we as a society are good at forgiving? Because I think that that's one of the most difficult things to do, is forgive people that have wronged you in whatever way and everything. And we're not always the best at doing it and everything. And sometimes we let it internalize, and I know that that's not healthy either. But I just wanted your thoughts around the forgiveness journey and why you chose to write this book.
We are all taught that we're supposed to forgive, but nobody teaches you how.
Right.
We're also taught that we should forgive everybody, including the unforgivable. On a forgiveness scale of 1 to 10, they would be a 10. And I'm probably the only one that's going to look you in the eye and say, you don't have to forgive the unforgivable. Sometimes it's not even appropriate. You don't have to forgive the unforgivable. You can forgive yourself and the energy around yourself, but you don't have to forgive the unforgivable. And when I forgive somebody, it doesn't mean I want a relationship with you, because I probably don't. It's not like Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm not going to reach out to you, because I'm not going to. I can do it in the privacy of my own home, all by myself. It doesn't mean they were right. It means that I want you out of my head. I want to stop thinking about you, and I want to do something else. So let's say this is anger. It's a really good visual. It's the only way I can explain it to people. And then I'll answer how I got into this. But this is anger. When you first get angry at somebody, I can hold it off to the side really easy. I'm still conducting my life. I can still see Mark. I can see other people coming in. Easy peasy. But I'm going to continue to hold it, and I'm going to continue to get angry, and I'm going to continue to put more anger inside this glass. So eventually my arm's going to start to hurt, and it's going to slowly come in front of me. I can still kind of see over the glass, but I'm still holding it, and I'm still getting angry because I'm not forgiving anybody. So now my arm hurts. So now I'm using both hands. So now my hands are kind of tied. So now I can't do anything. I literally can't conduct my life. And if I keep holding on to it, now I'm not going to see the significant other. I'm not going to see my dream job. I'm not going to see anything. So forgiveness literally gets people out of your head so you can put down that glass and you can conduct your life. When you forgive people, it'll increase your finances. It will increase your health. It has a bunch of benefits. But do me a favor. Start with the easy ones first. Get a list of 10 people, a list of, people you need to forgive. Start with the people you label number 1. The grocery cart rage. That person who cut you off at the grocery store and you got really mad. Start with them. or the person in high school who stained your sweater, something like that. Easy ones, and save those number 10s for last.
Now, what are some of the unforgivables? Because I know that sometimes one of the things that happens in the forgiveness journey is, I guess, the hardest person to forgive is yourself and everything. Because I know that there have been relationships that I've been in, and in hindsight, they were probably toxic relationships, and I probably should have forgiven myself in the first place for just getting involved in them. They might have been people that were bipolar or had other things going on in their
Sure.
life. And so, what do you consider in some of the things that are unforgivable, and all along those lines? I'm imagining that there are certain deadly sins, if you go the religious route, that are probably unforgivable. But I was just wondering, what are
Okay.
we thinking in the relationship standpoint that are unforgivable?
It's a personal thing. What I think is unforgivable, somebody else might think is forgivable. But I'm thinking, if you're raped, or you were hurt, or you were beaten, surely they are number 10s.
Mhm.
If you had a rough childhood, most people I talk to who had a rough childhood, forgiving their parents, they're a 10.
Mhm.
100% they're a 10. Maybe you were bullied in school. Maybe they're a 10. Maybe you just left a relationship, and for whatever reason, they did something that really set you off, and you've labeled them a 10. That's fine. Forgiveness is an onion. And some of those 10s, you might have to do some mental gymnastics. You might be able to get them down to an 8, and then maybe eventually down to a forgivable level. And some of them you won't be able to. you know, you can forgive yourself.
Mhm.
And here's other things that nobody else is going to tell. You can forgive people, places, and things. You
Right.
can forgive your childhood home. You
Mhm.
can forgive your childhood school. You can forgive. I forgave 1974. Why did I forgive 19? It was a horrible year. My parents got divorced, and I was getting bullied in school. I was in the 8th grade, and I almost committed suicide. So when I sat down and I started this forgiveness journey, I thought, I'm just going to forgive 1974 and everybody in it and the energy around it. I have a friend who forgave a little red wagon. She got her list together and she randomly wrote down a little red wagon, had no memory of the wagon, had no idea why she wrote it down, but she forgave that little red wagon because she thought, well, probably something from my childhood, and I guess I'm mad at the thing. So she forgave it. The thing about it is, when you get angry, you think that the anger goes out into the world, you're yelling at somebody, and that energy, which is neither created nor destroyed, that's what Einstein said, goes up into the clouds and disappears.
Well, as you was just saying that, I'm
Just
thinking to myself that I might have to forgive the Little Red Wagon as well, because when I was in school, and I went to school here in North Carolina, meaning most of my, well, all of my schooling in terms of like pre-college education and everything was here in North Carolina. I mean, my parents did take me out and did homeschooling for about a year or two, but most of it was either in places like Greensboro. I think there was a little bit of schooling there. There was definitely schooling in Warrenton, where I grew up at, and everything along those lines. But I do remember having a professor that was literally their favorite expression. So if you did not,
little red wagon.
if you were the kid, did not bring in your paper, and you tried to give them an excuse, like, the dog ate it or something like that, their go-to expression was, "That's your little red wagon." So that was their go-to expression. So for that
You
reason, I
probably
had
need
to
to
forgive.
forgive the little red wagon.
Right. I might have to forgive the little red wagon, because that was their go-to expression. So much so that some 40 or 50 years later, I literally remember that expression and them using it ad nauseum and all in that space, because that was their way of saying that you had to take responsibility for what you did and not try to come up with an excuse. And that's where they used that little red wagon expression and all in that space. I hadn't even really thought about it that much until you just brought up that your friend forgave a little red wagon. So I'm gonna
Now
have
I
to
know
go.
2 people that have forgiven a little red wagon. There you
Right.
go.
Yeah. That's right. But sometimes you got to forgive expressions as well. I might even have to forgive, and you'll get a kick out of this. But I remember when I was in college and I went to Marquette, I was notorious, and I think somebody else had a recent bet recently. It might even have been a famous celebrity and everything. But I was notorious for using Southern um, expressions and everything. And I remember a group of folks.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, yeah, bless your heart is one of those. But I was
Mhm.
always, as I was coming from rural North Carolina to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, using the phrase y'all. So I had
Yep.
some friends of mine that bet me that I could not stop using y'all. And I think it was probably something simple, like a dime every time I used it, or a quarter every time I used it. And I think that at some point they realized that I was about to go broke if they actually carried out the bet. So they forgave me that bet because, like I said, I was keeping using y'all, and I still use it to this day. So that's like I still drink Southern tea or sweet tea and all in that space. And yeah, they were like, Mark, we give up. We've already collected probably about $1,000 on you, and you have not stopped using the phrase. So I might have to forgive y'all as well. So y'all might be something else that needs forgiving, or I might have to forgive them for coming up with that stupid bet when we were in college and everything. You mentioned earlier, and I wanted to come to that, and definitely want to come back to the forgiveness journey. But you mentioned that you were one of the founders of an industry, and I'm thinking that was when you were in, I believe it was in the Midwest and everything. But during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people that got very excited about concierge work and all in that space because that was one of those jobs that people needed help in, and all in that kind of line. So I just wondered if you could share a little bit about the concierge work and your being a founder in that industry, because I do know I went on my first cruise ever actually with a friend of mine from Nevada, and I know that some of those people are also, I mean, the people that work on the cruise also as a side job may do some concierge work as well, because they sometimes come from countries that are very concierge oriented and everything. But I just wondered how you got into the industry, and if you can share a little bit about that, because the network is founded by two entrepreneurs, that being Nick Palbeda and Kim Calhoun. But I just wanted your thoughts around getting into that business.
It'd be my pleasure. The only way I can explain how I got into it is to tell you the history. In 1998, the independent concierge industry really hadn't been born. If there were 20 concierge in the country, that might have been high. It was started by a few hotel concierge who thought, if this works for a hotel, I bet I can bring it to mainstream America. So they did. In about 1998, I was living in New Jersey with my husband, and we had a meeting in an event planning company. And we read an article in Entrepreneur Magazine about this what we think is an interesting industry. We're not very sure, but it's something called concierge industry, and there are 3 people doing it, 3 people in the United States. And I read the article and I thought, we're doing more concierge work than we are meeting planning, according to the details of this article. So along that time, I moved from New York down to North Carolina. We were living in Apex at the time. So we started up a concierge business. There were no books, no classes, no articles, nothing. It was like the ultimate of self-taught. So I figured out how to do it. It took me about a year. And I had an office, and the phone started to ring. We put up a rudimentary website with dial-up modems and floppy disks. Yes, I am that old. And the phone started to ring with people saying, could you help me figure out how much to charge? I kind of want to do this. And if they weren't in North Carolina, I saw no reason not to help them. So I did. And my husband came into my office one day and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm just kind of helping him." He said, "Why are you doing it for free?" That was a really good question. Why am I doing it for free? So I pivoted our business for the 3rd time, and we turned it into a concierge consulting company. Eventually, I discovered there was no associations for independent concierge. So being that I'm a big fan of pain, I started an independent concierge association. And that's how I became one of the founders. It went from 20 people to worldwide. I taught people how to offer 5-star customer service, staff all over the world. I retired from the industry last year, but that's kind of how it started. And I wrote several books about it.
Now, speaking of that, and speaking of some of the various books that you wrote and all along those lines, you just brought up something that has come up on this show several times, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this, which is that oftentimes if you are doing any kind of work as a consultant, there are a number of folks that like you to do the work and to give them the service for free. As a matter of fact, I just had a call not that long ago from a friend of mine. He calls it the brain drain, and he used to be an administrator at the Carolina Theater here in Durham, and he was actually one of the people that handled the rentals and all along those lines before he actually had a health emergency of his own. He actually has suffered, I think, multiple strokes and is a multiple stroke survivor and is doing quite well, Ray Pascal and all along those lines. But I was just wondering your thoughts around this notion of, even during the pandemic, we saw a lot of people that would be asked for their expertise and not always given the pay for their expertise. And I'm sure you even see that as a speaker and a trainer where folks are wanting the advice and don't necessarily want to give the rewards. And I mean, they definitely would get their plumbers paid, but they don't always want to pay their event planners or their concierge or a number of others. So what is your advice to those that are running into this idea of, you're doing it even at the age of 50 or 60 for the experience or this or that? There's always various reasons that they give you that they cannot afford to pay you and everything. So what advice do you give to folks that are in the entrepreneurship lane that are facing those folks that are nickel and diming them for whatever reasons?
Well, I'm not going to pay you, but you're going to be exposed to a lot of people. You're going to get exposure. People die from exposure. I have done a lot of gigs speaking wise for exposure, and it's never gotten me anything. So I am a big fan of getting paid for work. If I do something for free, especially in the concierge industry, free isn't going to put food on the table for me. Free isn't going to pay my mortgage. Free isn't going to get me anything. And I understand that you want me to do it for free, and you think I should do it for free because you could run errands yourself for free, but that's just going to cause me to die because I can't do it for free because I have bills to pay. So when people say, oh, Catherine, you'll get a lot of exposure, I appreciate that, but I need you to pay expenses and a stipend because that's not going to pay my bills. So I'm actually not a fan of doing things for free. When you're first starting out, you want the business, you want to do things, you want the exposure. I get that. So do it for a month or two. As long as you have money in the bank and you can feed yourself, okay, do it for a month or two. But there has to be a stopping point. At some point, you have to stop doing it for free because people won't take you seriously if you do it for free, because they won't.
No, they definitely won't. And along those same lines, one of the things that I know became very popular, and I joked about it at the beginning, and I was only partially joking and everything, but even in the concierge business, there are a lot of people that were feeling that, why should I pay for a concierge when I can have somebody that is doing it on the independent or the gig level? Because I do know that there are some people that would consider Instacart or some of the other ones, even Grubhub and DoorDash, as a form of concierge work and everything. So what is your answer to folks that are like, why do I need a concierge when I can actually hire some of these gig type workers to do what basically a concierge does and everything, when you call it of that notion of running errands? And there are some people that are pointing to some of these new companies that have popped up over the last 5 to 10 years.
Do you want to go to a fast food restaurant, or do you want to go to a nice restaurant where you'll be sit down and people will serve you and give you personalized service? Yep. There are a bunch of people out there that love fast food restaurants. It's a really good fit for them. It meets their needs. But there's a bunch of other people that we want you to know our name. We want the personalized service, and we want something that we can't find in a fast food restaurant. That's when you hire a concierge who will do, I used to say Yellow Pages. I have to update it. A concierge will do anything on Google as long as it's legal, moral, and ethical. They'll do it. And it's a question of, do you want a 1-star restaurant or do you want a 5? That's really the difference. It's what kind of service do you want? And a concierge, they're going to vet their people. Mm-hmm. No disrespect to the fast food concierge out there, but a real concierge is going to vet their people. So you're not just getting anything. They're gonna look these people up and make sure that they're as honest as the day is long. Because trust is the hallmark of that industry.
And trust is very much a hallmark of the industry. Speaking of trust, and this comes down to one of those forgiveness things and everything. I know that one of the things that folks get frustrated about in business is folks that have their dreams and their ambitions, and then they kind of want you to carry their dreams and ambitions and not necessarily think whether that is your vision or not. Because I do know some people that have visions, and they are definitely entrepreneurial visions, and then they will try to bring you into the picture and not realize whether you are having a shared goal or all along those lines, and then they get frustrated if you don't necessarily want to help them out and everything in that space. So how important is it for you to make sure that you are aligned with the vision of the entrepreneurs that you work with, whether that is as a consultant or just in general? Because I know that I've been on some places where eventually I trained them in some of the skill sets, like around even the one we're using StreamYard and stuff, because I realized that they would, if they had their way, I'd be doing nothing but their work and not necessarily going in accomplishing my own goals and my own ambitions and everything. So how important is it to align with people that are of like-minded backgrounds?
Well, over the last 25 years, I have trained my competition, not by choice, didn't know I was doing it at the time. So I learned very quickly to trust the little bird on my shoulder. And I mean that with every fiber of my being. You know, you can be talking to somebody who looks good. They're in a 3-piece suit. Their resume looks good. And something just feels off.
Right.
Trust it. Because that's a little bird in your shoulder chirping at you saying, excuse me, you know, that kind of thing. So you have to trust your gut. And you have to have the mindset of, if it's not a good fit, walk away. Now, a concierge will never say no to you. We train that, but they'll say something, well, I can't provide that service for you. It would be my pleasure to find somebody who will. Give me 24 hours, give me a day, give me a week, and I'll circle back and I'll give you a list of people who can help you. So
what's the craziest thing?
I've done that many times in my life.
I got that. What's the craziest thing that you've had somebody request? Because I used to be, and you know, riders are very much a part of the contracts if you're involved in the entertainment world, and I've been involved in that for a number of years. Definitely have worked with the Bull Durham Blues Festival, which is on hiatus and maybe even permanent hiatus, and all along those lines. I've definitely worked with Centerfest and a number of other festivals, including the Eno and others here in this area, and even a few outside of the North Carolina area, and all in that space. Not a lot, but a few that I've at least had some dealings with, and all in that space. But I do know that sometimes people can ask for some unusual requests. I want to say that there was one of the times that I can remember was there was a popular R&B group that wanted to know where the closest dance club is, and I'm not talking about regular dancing, I'm talking about like adult dancing and all along those lines. And one of my friends actually chose to take them there, even though if I had my way, they would not have made it to that particular location, because I thought that could create some jeopardy to their career and just into life in general and everything. But unfortunately, I had a friend that was less scrupulous than that in my mind and everything. And then I also had somebody that, I think that was with the Blues Festival, wanted a particular cigar brand that I don't think we have that much of here in the area, and it was difficult to find it, but we did find somebody that found that brand and everything. So I was just wondering, what are some of the more unusual requests that you have seen as a concierge?
In my website, in my blog, is a blog entry that's the 18 craziest concierge stories I've ever been across, and it's also in one of my books, The Concierge Manual. But once upon a time, long time ago, there was a concierge who was asked to do a party in Egypt, and they needed to find a dozen albino peacocks. Who knew that such a thing exists? But apparently they do. And so they had to find an albino peacock. They found an albino peacock farm somewhere in Europe, had to fly the peacocks from the farm to the party that was in one of the pyramids of Egypt, because of course it was. And they had to get them there alive, and then they had to get them back. So that's a crazy story.
That's definitely a crazy story. And just to think,
albino peacock.
Yeah, to try to find some albino peacocks, that you got to go and find them and everything. But you know,
then there's another story. It was an international concierge, a company called Quintessentially, and one of the partners of the company told me this story. He said he was driving to London, and he got a call from a client who was stuck. They call elevators lifts over there, and he said he was stuck in a hotel lift. And he called me because he wanted me to get him out. Okay, call me crazy. If I'm in a hotel, I'm not going to call my concierge. I'm probably going to call the hotel front desk and say, I'm in your elevator. But this shows you how addicted people get to their concierge. And that's what you want. You want them to have you on speed dial. So he called the front desk and said, you got somebody stuck in your elevator. They said, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. Said he didn't believe me. He said, why would I call you and tell you there was somebody stuck in your elevator if there wasn't somebody stuck in your elevator? and everything worked out fine. But concierge are asked to do very, very crazy things. I had a friend in Philadelphia who got hired to take a gentleman's 90-something-year-old mom's dresses to the dry cleaner every week. Sounds benign. Yeah, it sounds fine, right? Well, the only way you can tell because when she took off her dress, she'd put it back up in the closet with all the other ones. So the only way she could figure out whether the dress was clean or dirty was to, wait for it, sniff it. And I looked at her and I said, please tell me you don't provide dress sniffing services. And she said, well, you got to do what you got to do.
You got to do what you got to do.
The craziest story that ever happened to me personally is not a concierge story, but I got a call and I was busy one day, and I usually answer Catherine Giovanni, all professional, but I was busy that day. I was writing. So I just answered the phone and I said, GOL Group, can I help you? This was about 20 years ago. She said, I'd like to interview you for a book that I'm writing. I said, okay, what's the book about? She said, well, I'm writing a book on how to start a concierge business, and my goal is to blow Catherine Giovanni's book out of the water.
Wait a minute. So she called you in order to write a book that was going to actually usurp your book or do better than your book and everything? Did you know who
she didn't know she was talking to me? To this day, I don't know how she got my number and how she didn't realize she was talking to me, because I didn't identify myself because I was busy. So I'm from New York. And, for a split second, you think to yourself, I could have some fun with this and I could play this out a little bit. But because I'm a concierge and I am who I am, I immediately said, it'd be my pleasure to grant you an interview. But sadly, you're speaking to Catherine Giovanni. Click. She hung up that phone so fast. We didn't have cell phones back then. We actually had real phones. You could actually hear it slamming into the cradle. And I looked for that book for about a year, and surprisingly, it never came out.
It never
I'm
came out.
not exactly shocked by that. That was the craziest thing that ever happened to me in my business career.
It sounds like a crazy thing. You actually talking about the cell phone, and I was actually thinking about its invention and, of course, the invention of laptops and all along those lines and how prevalent they are. But yes, I do remember that. And speaking of forgiveness, sometimes you have to forgive people because they have differing beliefs and all along those lines and everything. And I remember, and sadly, she passed away of her own cancer battles and everything. And she was a very successful musician and everything, but a ex-girlfriend that was a college girlfriend, I literally remember rushing to the phone because, back in those old ice ages of the 80s, as you said, most of us didn't have cell phones and all along those lines, but we had a summer relationship, and it was a very nice relationship and a fun relationship. But she was a member of the JWs, the Jehovah's Witness, and I think she wrote me a nice little letter that basically said that the relationship would have to end unless I was willing to join the Kingdom Hall and join that particular denomination and that particular religion. And I was not feeling it at that time. Don't think I'd be feeling it at this time either and everything. So I just remember rushing downstairs to the common phone to basically call this young lady and basically be like, okay, that was fun, but no, that's not happening. So I'm not joining that particular church. So this relationship is ending and all in that space. So that was
lots of love moving on, right?
It was fun, but I had to move on because I was not feeling it. And all along those lines, it was like, that was one of the times where I had to forgive myself in order to make that decision and be like, nope, can't do it. Cannot compromise my own principles in order to follow in the love train and all in that space. One of the things we talk about a lot of times, Kathy, on this show, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this because you got so many great stories and so many things that you've been sharing and everything, is that this notion of the inner critic, and you kind of alluded to it before and everything. We've definitely had several guests that have talked about it before as well. And whether it is relationships or whether it is job opportunities, even so where I'm at now, there have probably been job opportunities that I had that conversation with myself constantly and kept telling myself, no, don't go for it. Don't go for it. Don't go for it. And by the time you finally talk yourself into going for it, the job has left or the relationship is left or whatever you are pursuing has left. So we do know that the inner critic can be the worst critic and all in that space. So how have you dealt with that inner critic? And if you had those moments where you're sitting there going like, I know that I am having this internal dialogue with myself, but it might be getting me to lose some business, even in the entrepreneurship journey or in the concierge journey as well. So I just wanted your thoughts around how you have dealt with that inner critic.
You can talk yourself in or out of anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can drive yourself crazy. Should I go in this direction? Should I not go in this direction? Everybody's telling me I should take my business in this direction, and I should market, and I need business cards, and I need to be on social media, and I'm going to be on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and X or Twitter or whatever they call it today. I'm going to do slow down. First of all, one of the things I always ask myself, whether it's something that's blowing up in my life or a direction I need to go in, is I actually legitimately ask myself, what is the most loving solution? And then I get very quiet, and it's that still silent voice in the back of your mind. It's the most loving voice. It's the little bird in your shoulder. It's your intuition. It's your gut. And that's what I listen to. And that's how I kind of got where I am today. That little bird in my shoulder at one point told me to write a book. Never written a book in my life. So I wrote a book. It told me, you should start a concierge business. I should start a what? Didn't even know what it was at those point. So it's a question of listening to your intuition. And just because somebody else says, I got a business for you, I've made a bunch of money, and I only work between 10 and 2, and you can be a millionaire by Tuesday at 5. Okay. Maybe it worked for them. It might not work for you. Just because it works for somebody else, your friend, your father, your parents, whoever, doesn't necessarily mean that's your yellow brick road. So, if you're stuck, and I mean really stuck, I tell everybody to get quiet, turn off your technology. These things do have an off button. Tell your family you need to be quiet for a half hour. Tell them, go lock yourself into a closet. I used to go into the garage when my kids were young. My sons are grown and out, but when they were young, I used to go into the garage and lock the door, get a pad of paper and a pen, and then just sit quietly and say, what direction should I go in? And then whatever words form in your mind, write them down. Write them down blind. It doesn't matter what you write, just write it down. So this is an exercise to help you tap into that inner critic, to tap into that inner voice, to get the answers that you're looking for. Because the answer to every question that everybody watching this broadcast has is not going to be found in any of my books or gurus. It's actually all the answers you need are right inside of you. They're already there. It's just a matter of tapping into them.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, one of the other things that I know a lot of times people talk about, even in that entrepreneurship journey, because I've got a number of friends that have been involved in various MLMs and all along those lines, and I have been approached by a number of them, and they're always not realizing that there's only so many masters or so many jobs that we can have and everything. And definitely, I know with the gig economy, many people are working 2 or 3 jobs, even if they are like yourself in a loving marriage and everything. Oftentimes, both spouses are working 2 or 3 jobs. But I do know that it does seem like with time management that there has to be a limit, because what I have found myself telling some folks is that no, I might be willing to buy the card if there, or the perk if there is a perk, but I can't necessarily dedicate myself toward the business because I'm already involved in about 3 or 4, and that's stretching the limit.
That's the thing, right?
Everything.
That's the thing. We're chasing happiness. I will be happy when I graduate from school. Okay, I'm a genie. You graduate from school. Are you happy? No, I'm going to be happy when I get married. Okay, boom, you're married. You happy yet? We keep bumping the happiness. When are you going to be happy? When you're 95 and your teeth are in a cup by your bed? The trick to life is, and this is what we're taught, and you're taught wrong. No disrespect intended, but we're taught that you get a bunch of money, you work really hard, then you'll be happy. It's actually backwards. Get happy, then the money will flow. So if you're not happy in your job, you're not happy in your relationship, you take everything you're doing, get a pad of paper, put a line down the middle, go pro and con or yes and no, whatever you want to do. Everything that you love, put on the left side, and everything you hate, you put on the right side, and see what kind of commonality you have. If you're trying to start a business, well, I like to travel. Okay, write that down on the left. Well, I don't like to work with people. Okay, well, we might have to amend that. And that's kind of how I've always approached things. It's a question of what makes me happy. There's no reason you can't make money doing something that makes you happy.
No, I agree with you on that. But the other thing that you talk about quite a bit in a number of your books is understanding intuition and
Yeah, I
empathy,
do.
and all along those lines. While we hear people talk about it quite a bit, I don't know that many people have an understanding of what it truly means and what that is and everything. So, what to you is intuition and what is empathy? Because I definitely have been told by a number of folks that I am very empathetic, even in the ways that I conduct these interviews and everything. But definitely, and I definitely have an intuitive sense. And sometimes, even though the intuition may tell you something, sometimes we go against the intuition, because even some of those relationships I was talking about, I already knew that they were not going to be for me, but I was trying to figure out ways to make them work in order to pursue what you just said earlier, that happiness and all along those lines. But that little birdie was already telling me that this is a walking disaster, but sometimes
Yeah.
we don't always want to listen to the birdie and all
No,
in
we don't.
that space.
When I don't listen to that little bird, that's when things go wonky, right? You're
Mhm.
very intuitive, and everybody's intuitive. Our intuition will talk to us in one of four ways. You'll see it, you'll hear it, you'll feel it, or you'll just know it.
Right.
I hear things. Now, it doesn't mean I'm in the middle of a Stephen King novel and I'm going to start hearing and seeing ghosts coming in. That's not what I'm talking about. You will hear the message in a song. You might even hear some words in your head. I usually do. You hear the message in somebody who's talking to you. The people who see it, it's not that you're going to see ghosts. You see the answer. In school, you were a visual person. In school, I like to hear I like to hear music. I like to hear the teacher, because that's how I learn. Visual people, I want to see it. I want to see the spreadsheet. That's how they learn. The people who just know it, it's just 1 minute you don't, and the next minute, boom, it's in your head. Right. And you just know it. You don't know why you know it. You just do. And then there are the people who kind of feel their way through life. You go, and then they're called empaths. And you walk into a room and it just feels off.
Right.
Or you shake somebody's hand and something's wrong. And you listen to it. And, if you go into a room and it feels off, my advice to everybody, okay, leave if you're allowed to, and make sure you look around the room before you leave and maybe write down your feelings so you can go back and learn that again. And it's a matter of listening to your special gift, because we all do this. Every single person on the planet is intuitive. Right. Every single one of us. We all just have a different way of hearing it. And it's a matter of just identifying one of those four ways. Everybody listening say, oh yeah, I kind of do that. I do have feelings, and I kind of walk into a room, and sometimes I just know, or sometimes I just know things. I mean, I just know it. I just know the answer. It comes right out of my mouth. I just know it. Or sometimes you'll just think, I heard it. I hear voices in my head. It doesn't mean I need a straitjacket, and it doesn't mean I need medicine. It doesn't mean that I'm schizophrenic. Sometimes I legitimately will hear answers. Or sometimes you'll see it. You'll see it in your mind's eye. Can you see your childhood bedroom in your mind right now?
I sat there and dug long enough, because I do remember there was a big teddy bear that I had.
Yeah.
I want to say
Can you see the color of the teddy bear? Can you see the room?
I can see some of that, because I remember one of the teddy bears was like a brown, I want to say it was like a dog-like figure, and it had big fluffy ears and all in that space. I do remember that was there. And I want to say that there was one of the rooms in the childhood had a bunk bed, and part of the reason of knowing that is because it was literally, remember, and it's a sad memory, but falling out of that bunk bed and literally landing on the floor, thumping myself on the floor, dusting myself off, realizing that I was all right, looked up at the bunk bed, and it was like, no, I'm not going back up there. So I ended up sleeping on that particular day, I think, on the floor, because I was not going to climb back up to possibly roll back over and hit that floor one more time.
That's clairvoyance. That means you're clairvoyant. That means you see the answer. You could see the answer in your mind's eye. You see it. You see it on the page. You see things that you read. But sometimes you can just see the images, and you can see the answer in your head. That's clairvoyance. When you hear things, that's clairaudient. It means you hear the answer. I might hear it in music. I might actually hear angels and stuff giving me guidance. And the empaths and the feeling, these are all what they used to call clairs. And everybody on the planet has one or more of them that they're good at. It's just a matter of waking up to the fact that you are special, and everybody is intuitive, and everybody can learn this.
No, I agree.
Yes, I wrote a book about it. So yeah, there you go.
No, definitely. I know that's definitely more people can tap into, because I remember when I want to say it was my senior year of high school, you're talking about childhood memories and everything, going to a journalism camp and everything. And even to this day, and we were from 5 different states. I think that the furthest south might have been Georgia. So it's Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, I think that, Virginia, Maryland, DC area. So, and as soon as I stepped in that room, and ironically, that was the same year that my grandfather passed away and everything, and all along those lines. But as soon as I stepped in that room, I already had seen every last one of those faces and everything, because I had one of those visions that you're talking about. Because it's like, I had never met these people ever in my life, and there was a select few that I still hear from every blue moon and everything. But definitely, I just remember as soon as I stepped in that room, I had already known their face and knew who they were before I ever knew them personally, and everything, because I'd had a vision of them prior to that particular event.
It's nothing to be scared of. A lot of people have these visions. Some people have them some people have them in life or death situations. A friend of mine was falling asleep at the wheel, and right before she was going to hit, this is a true story, right before she was going to hit the median, she heard the words, "Wake the hell up."
Wow.
And she woke up and turned the wheel, and it saved her life.
Wow.
The trick is to tap into that energy when you're not in a life and death situation.
Definitely have to tap into that energy. Speaking of energy, one of the other things that happens a lot is, and you actually come from 2 areas, because I was actually going to teach you about this, but there are 2 areas that are very much stereotyped and everything, because you mentioned having spent some time in New York, and of course New York is seen as the rush, go kind of place, even though I have known some people that were
for 30 years.
Yeah, and I've known some people that were definitely not the harshness, and I'm saying that there are not all, some of those stereotypes aren't based on fact and everything, but they aren't as tough as New Yorkers are sometimes portrayed to be. Just like I know some people from the South, including North Carolina, that aren't as polite as people portray North Carolinians as being. So I was just wondering, what are some of those stereotypes? Because we want to talk about stereotypes. Both North Carolina and New York have some staunch stereotypes that you have had to deal with and that have surprised you about these 2 areas that you have chosen to call home, one that you grew up in and one that you are now living in now. So I just wondered, what are some of those stereotypes that have surprised you that you found to either be true, or, as I alluded to earlier, they're not always as true as they are perceived to be?
New Yorkers are given a bad rap. They're called, it's rush, they're cold, and nobody wants to help each other, and that's actually very far from the truth. They are warm, they are friendly. Most of them will give you the shirt off their backs. In the South, I have found warm, friendly, approachable Southern hospitality, and I have seen people that I just wonder how they get through life.
Right.
And I have learned a few things. Here's the difference between a Northerner and a Southerner. I figured the North and the South out. I have not figured out the West or Europe, but I have figured the Northerners and Southerners. If a Northerner wants to say something wonky to you, they're going to do it at the beginning of the sentence. So they're going to look at you and they're going to say, "With all due respect," and then they're going to verbally punch your lights out. So if you hear somebody from New York or New Jersey saying, "With all due respect," brace yourself, because you're about to be hit between the eyes with something.
Right.
A Southerner will put it at the end of the sentence because they don't want to hurt your feelings, and they're very hospitable. So they'll put it at the end of the sentence. So they're going to small talk you for a long time. They're going to want to sit on things. They don't want to make a decision right away, most of them. And then they're going to put their thing on the end of the sentence. So they're going to say something to you like, "Your baby's as ugly as a stump, bless his little heart." So if you hear a "bless your heart," try really hard to think about what was at the beginning of that sentence.
Right.
But Southerners are warm, friendly, and approachable, and so are New Yorkers. It's a question of, when I go to a city, I expect to meet warm, and I know this sounds weird, but I expect to meet warm, friendly, and approachable people, and that's usually how it plays out. I expect to meet nice people. Every once in a while, I get, you get hit by things, but most of the time, I meet really, really sweet people.
Speaking of getting hit by things and everything, you had talked about it earlier in one of the shows that we do every Sunday. I actually do it with, well, they are the host of it, Stephanie Hockenhall, who was in Kansas, and her son, Gene Francis, if I'm remembering Gene Williams, if I'm remembering his name correctly and everything. But it's a show around bullying called Where Is the Love? And all along those lines.
Yeah.
But definitely that being said and everything, one of the things that I know that you talk about in some of your talks is this notion of forgiveness and whether you have to forgive the person face to face. And I do know that in their case, they have been bullied in relationships, they've been bullied in workplaces, they've been bullied in a number of varying environments. They were even talking about how bullying can happen in the church. And I do know that that is for real as well. So I was just wondering, is that something that folks should try to forgive people if they're going to forgive them face to face? And do you have to tell folks why you are forgiving them and all along those lines? Or can you just do it in the quiet of your own home and let them not even know whether you've forgiven them or not? Or is it better to do it in a public landscape?
The way I approach forgiveness, especially in the book, is this is not Alcoholics Anonymous, so you don't have to reach out to people. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to call them. Forgiveness is very personal and very selfish. You do it for you. You don't do it for them. It doesn't mean they were right. And just because I forgive you doesn't mean I want a relationship with you. I probably don't. I probably don't even want to talk to you. You do it in the privacy of your own home. You don't have to tell anybody you're doing it. You don't have to reach out to them. It's something you do for you because you want to get them out of your head. You want to stop thinking about this so you can look at the opportunities in the world and the universe can start flowing stuff to you. You want to get this stuff out of your head and out of your energy field. Because when you get angry, it kind of sticks around in your energy field. So if you get angry enough over enough years and you don't forgive people, you're kind of walking around in a gray cloud. So forgiving people, as if you believe Einstein, it's going to change that energy from dark to light. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. It just turns into something else. And that's what you're doing with forgiveness. But it's personal. You don't have to tell a soul you're doing it. You can do it in the privacy of your own house. Nobody has to know.
That sounds
and
great.
You don't have to forgive the unforgivable because some things you just can't get there. And that's fine.
Yeah, definitely. There's some things that you can't forgive, and then
That's
whatever
fine.
it is, you're unforgivable on your unforgivable list, and all along those lines. I've talked to a couple people, both on the network and even outside the network, in like just face-to-face conversations as well, that have talked about how they feel that despite the divisiveness that is going on in the country and what's going on in our political landscape and in our world landscape, that they actually feel, and these are even a number of people that consider themselves to be empaths or to be involved in what some people call light work, that we are actually heading toward a better time of the year and that there's about to be a shift and there's going to be a positive shift. And I was just wondering if that's something that you believe as well, and if so, do you think that 2024 will see that, and if so, when, how will it happen? Because I've heard a number of people that have said that all of this turbulence that we've had for the last several years, including the pandemic and including those various wars and a number of other things, is the prelude before a positive shift that is, they feel, is in the future of the, not just the United States, but the world in general. But I just wonder your take on that and whether you think that we are heading toward a positive shift.
I agree. You know, the thing about life is you can't forgive something and clear it if you don't know it's there. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like the earth is bringing up all the horrible things. They've been there all along. We just didn't see it. But now we're seeing it. It's all coming up. And now that we can see it, you can fix it. Mm-hmm. And it looks like our world is getting worse. But what's really happening is it's actually a rebirth. And we're seeing all the horrible, yucky stuff come up. And hopefully our society all across the globe is going to have more loving, more compassionate way of looking, a more forgiving energy. And I agree with them. I think we're moving towards a completely different world that's going to be a lot better than this one. But we're not going to move to it until we get rid of all the horrible stuff. And you can't get rid of it if you don't know it's there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned earlier having that loving husband of yours and definitely having the two kids and all along those lines. And I had alluded to it earlier, having a multitude of jobs in my own life and everything. But how do you deal with that work-life balance? Because that is something that I find a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and all along those lines. I just wondering, how do you deal with that work-life balance? Because I know earlier you had mentioned something that I know a lot of folks have a difficult time with, which is turning off of the devices. And so when I say devices, I'm not just talking about the computer, but sometimes you also got to turn off the TV. And like my nephews, if you got one of those Oculus sets, you sometimes might have to turn that off as well. But how do you deal with that work-life balance and all in that space?
We figured that out years ago, actually. We both wanted to stay home with the kids, and I like to work. So we pulled our operation and our company into our house. So I've been working out of my home since 1995. And back in those days, nobody worked out of their home. You jumped through hoops of fire to prevent people from heat, knowing you worked out of your home. You'd say things like, "Oh, I'm going to be in your area anyways. Why don't I drop by your office?" I wasn't going to be in their area. I just didn't want them to come to my house. So now everybody works from home, but working from home allowed me to, I have my own company. So it allowed me to have my own hours and be there for soccer and football and baseball and all those things. And because I was training concierge, I know concierge all over the globe, so I could get the assistance that I needed when I needed it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You're talking about that, and I was also going to bring up something you brought up earlier as well, which is this notion of running, and how if there was an exercise or a picture of the anti-runner, it probably would have been you and everything. And ironically, my brother was one of those as well. I don't know that he was all that active in exercise and all in that space, but he did try to do some of those mud races or whatever they call them, but
Yeah.
those endurance races. And
My brother-in-law did that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think that after he failed two or three times, that was society or the Mother Nature telling him that he didn't need to try anymore. So he gave up on those, because I think the first one he did, he literally once he broke his leg or broke a femur or something like that, almost as soon as the race started.
They're
And then,
really hard, those races. I won't do one of those. My brother-in-law used to do stuff like that, and they're hard.
yeah, they're very hard. And like I said, I think Mother Nature was telling him not to run in those, because I think it was the second or maybe it was the third one. And I don't think he's attempted it since. He's got some other hobbies like riding those Polaris slingshots, and definitely using those to do other things that are very much his way of relieving and exercising kind of like whatever tensions are and everything. So what are some of the things that you do? Because I know that I sometimes will do puzzle games and everything in order to alleviate whatever stress may be going on in life. But what is your go-to activity to alleviate stress, whether it is stress from work or stress from family or just stress in general? Because I know that I have used to play Word with friends, and now I'm doing one of those puzzles that has to do with shapes and trying to get the keys that then solve one of those kind of like detective mysteries, or kind of like a logic puzzle. Matter of fact, I think that's the name of the game, is logic puzzle or something like that. But yeah, I've been finding those. But what is your go-to way of relieving stress?
Music and walking. I'm a big fan of music. In fact, the only way I can write is if I'm listening to very loud music. It used to drive my parents crazy, but it's the only way I can actually focus. And I'm a big fan of walking. So if I'm really stressed out, I usually peace out and I'll go take a walk just to clear my head. And I do have on my phone, we all have games and puzzles and stuff that we use, we all do that. But I'm a big fan of walking, and I'm a big fan of music. It's just the music, it kind of clears my head.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Definitely gotta have the head cleared and get those things going in that space as well. And I used to do that. There's a pond not that far from Duke that I used to walk a few times, and then I stopped getting into that habit. So I need to get back into it again, and all along those lines, because I got out of the positive habits and everything. So
Big Dish of Ice Cream also is I'm a big fan of. Yes, don't email me that I know it's bad for me. Yeah, I know it's bad for me, but if you have a really bad day, I haven't had a drink since 1990, so I don't do that. But a big bowl of ice cream, little chocolate sauce, I'm a fan.
It sounds like you're a good fan of that and everything. I mentioned earlier, it's the beginning of the new year, and I've not always one to do New Year's resolutions, because I sometimes think that we set ourselves up for failure by setting them up as resolutions and everything. But I'm just wondering, what is some of the New Year's goals? Because I think New Year's goals is different than a resolution. Because I think that if you set a resolution, you're already creating this expectation that might be beyond reasonableness and all in that space. But whereas if you set it as a more manageable kind of like thing, like I want to do it by year's end or within the year, then it might be easier than saying that, I'm going to lose 5 pounds in the next week, or I'm going to lose 10 pounds. I'm going to find the love of my life within 2 weeks and everything. Those sometimes seem like they might be unrealistic expectations. Whereas if you set them as goals that you're hoping to accomplish within a longer time frame, it just seems more reasonable to me and everything. But I just wondered, is that a similar philosophy that you have, and if you have any set for 2024?
I don't do New Year's resolutions, and I don't do goals. I do feelings. I do New Year's feelings. So if you want to make $10,000 this year by June 5th, I will turn that goal into a feeling.
Okay.
When I earn $10,000 by June 15th, it's going to make me feel how. And then I'll write that down. And then instead of reciting that stupid phrase every day over your coffee, I'll look at the phrase and I'll think about how I'm going to feel. I'm not going to recite the phrase. I'm just going to put myself into feeling mode and saying, if I have $10,000, how is it making me feel? What's going to make me feel happy? It's going to make me feel good. So I'm going to sit and try and get into a happy space while I'm thinking about that resolution. So I do New Year's feelings. I don't do New Year's words.
New Year's feelings sounds like a great way to do things along those lines. I know a lot of people this past New Year's were rushing down as society has opened up again to go see the acorn drop, where I understand there was an egg that was dropped in Nashville, North Carolina, that is. And I think there was a pickle drop in Mount Olive. So I was wondering, is that what you and your husband did, or were y'all one of those folks that was doing either a watch service or doing the kind of like relaxing at home? Because I know I brought it in, literally watching, I think, our local affiliate and them showing the dropping of the acorn, and also calling mom, because I do think it is important to have that connection to family members as well, particularly if you have a loving family. And I know not everybody has the same kind of loving family that I had, and all in that space. But if you've got a good relationship, it's always good to stay in touch with them if you've got that loving relationship. Now, if you don't have the loving relationship, that's a whole nother matter and everything. But I was just wondering what y'all did for the New Year's, and how important do you think it is to be connected to one family, and also being connected to what some people call the ancestors?
Well, usually we don't drink, so we usually stay home. Most of my family has passed, sadly, but we will call the family that's still alive on both sides. And we will certainly call our sons, but we usually stay home. Sometimes the sons will come home and be with us. More often than not, I'm asleep by 12:04. I mean, I will try and manage to stay up until 12, and then I peace out. Like at 12:04, I'm like, okay, bye.
It's like the New Year started. I'm going to sleep now. It's time, time to go to sleep and everything. Yeah. What advice did you give to your children that you think you wish more people would give to their kids as well? Because like I said, I don't have any kids of my own, but I do have my two nephews that are turning 40. Well, they were born 2008 and 2009, so they're about to turn 15 and 16 in August of this year and everything. So they're definitely both teenagers, and I just recently learned from my brother and everything. It's just the two of us that I now know what their careers are, because I think that the oldest one is thinking about being a architect, and I think the younger one is thinking about either being a lawyer or a biologist, which is
good for them.
Yep.
It's two different careers, lawyer and biologist. That's on two opposite sides there.
It's two opposite, and I'm not sure where the lawyer is coming from, because I don't know that he has any lawyers in the family. His grandfather or his great-grandfather, because it was my grandfather, but his great-grandfather was a biologist. The building at North Carolina Central University, the biology building, is actually named after my grandfather, his great-grandfather. And I know that my dad, his granddad is also very much into science and biology, even though he's known more in this area as an artist and all in that space. And he had that happen as a second or maybe even a third career, because he was also an activist and was also involved in radio and a number of other things before becoming an artist over the last, I'd say, but him and Linda have been together for 25 years. So at least probably almost a quarter of a century, if not longer, that he's been doing the artwork. But he's definitely been an active artist for probably the last 10 or 15 and all in that way. But I was just wondering, you know, it's just interesting hearing their advice from other people. So what advice did you give to your kids and everything?
Well, one thing we did is we had a family dinner. We sat down as a family and ate dinner almost every night. And I would ask the boys, what is the best question you asked today? Because I didn't want to say, what was your favorite lunch? What did you do? Nothing. I mean, you're trying to elicit something. And inevitably something would come out, and I would tell them, what is the most loving answer you can come up with? You know, if they were having a fight with something, well, what's the most loving way you can get out of this mess? Tell me that. And the other thing I tried to do is just let them be their authentic self. You know, I tried not to mold them into the image that I wanted them to be. I tried to allow them to be whoever it was they were going to be. And my oldest son is a federal law enforcement officer, works for Homeland Security up in Washington. And my other son is a video editor. So they turned out pretty well. It'd be nice if they gave me some grandkids at some point, but you know, we can't have everything.
Well, like, and that could happen late because my brother actually gave my parents their only grandkids when they when he was in his late 30s, early 40s, because he is now in his mid 50s or about to be. I joke with him that this is the year that he will turn the speed limit. So he'll turn 55 in October and all along those lines.
Good for him.
So it was literally 39, and it was with his then wife, and now he's got a new fiance because that relationship, for whatever reason, did not work out and everything. But they are co-parenting and doing a good job of co-parenting. But definitely at 39 is when Malik gave them their kids and everything. So that would have mean that mom would have been around our age. She would have been in her 60s at the time that she got her first grandkid and everything along those lines. Because, like I said, I don't have any, and Malik was waiting as well. So, and Dad was probably in his mid 60s at that time and everything. So he was almost pushing, probably near, he's probably pushing near 65 at the time that he had his first grandchild. And I know some people that are in their 40s and 30s that even have grandkids because they had them very young and everything. So definitely it'll be interesting. But
my mother used to reverse her age. So, you know, I'm 62. So she'd say, well, I'm, 26. Yeah. I always thought that was pretty funny.
No, well, my mom
actually had 88. She couldn't reverse it anymore. So there's that.
My mom had something that was similar. My mom used to joke when she was, I want to say when she was in her 50s, and maybe when she was in her 60s, but I'm pretty sure when she was in her 50s that she was going to start counting backwards. So if that was the case, by now she would be in her 20s because she just recently turned 80. Well, last year she turned 81 and everything. So if she was going by that, 50 to 81 would be 31. So 50 minus 31, she'd be 19 now. So yeah, she's definitely.
Here's some advice for anybody who's turning 30, 40, 50, 60, and you're all freaked out about it. What I used to do is 30 killed me, and then nothing ever bothered me because I figured it out. When I turned 39, I used to tell people, well, I'm going to be 40 next year. So technically I was telling people I was going to be 40 for 2 years in a row. So by the time I actually got to 40, I was used to saying it. And I've been doing that ever since.
Hey, that sounds
like when I
turned
60, I'd say, well, I'll be 60 next year. So by the time I got there, it still kind of stuck on me, but I was more used to it than I would have been.
So since this year will be 62, you're saying that I should tell everybody that I'll be turning 65 next year, so that by the time 65 actually gets here, then it will be less painful and everything.
I only do that for decades, but you could do it for 65. Sure, you could. Absolutely. Because you do it for 2 years in a row, then it's not as painful. Okay, it'll sting still. Now, I'm not going to lie, but it won't be full-fledged pain.
It won't be full-fledged pain. Did you ever regret not having a girl? Because I do know that there's some people that had all girls or all boys, and that they wish they had the opposite gender. And I know others that were like, no, I didn't want somebody that was the same gender as myself and everything. So I was just wondering,
I'm grateful for what I got, to be honest. And I will get my girl eventually. Somebody else has raised her. They've put her through school. They did a brilliant job. They're going to wrap her in white and give her to me. So I'm a patient woman, and I will get her eventually. I just have to be patient.
Just have to be patient and wait for them to find that other half, and you will get it in the sense of the daughter-in-law is what you're talking about.
Some family's doing a bang-up job with her, and then they're going to give her to me. And I'll be
And
that.
then that sounds like plans. I know a friend of mine that just recently happened, and she is not in, unlike you, she is not in a rush for them to give her a grandkid. But one of my dear friends from one of my jobs, not this particular job, but another job that is a testing company that I work for, meaning literary testing, measurement, ink, and everything. But yeah, her, I think it's her oldest son, because she's got two sons as well. And I think it was last year, the that son and his lady love got married, so she now has a daughter in that sense. But as I said, she's one of those folks that isn't rushing necessarily to get any grandkids. But I've got others that are the opposite. I've got a dear friend that is became a grandmother at a very early age. I want to say she was a grandmother in her early 40s and everything. And definitely she's now hitting the 50 milestone, and she's got multiple grandkids. And sometimes I think those grandkids are more of her precious love than even the kids were. She's had four kids and all in that space. And she was also in the service industry as well, because I want to say she has been trained as an esthetician, a car saleswoman, as well as a number of other fields as well. But yeah, she loves the dearly, I think, all of those grandkids. Because every time I'm looking on her Instagram or Facebook, it does seem like there's constant pictures of those young people and her being very much attached to them in one form or fashion. Now, she's not always the biggest fan of the kids, but that's a whole other story. That might be that forgiveness journey that you were talking about. So she definitely hasn't had to have anything to do the young people have done to be forgiven. But yeah, she's not always the biggest fan of the kids that were brought into the world by her and her then significant other. But yeah, we can't always pick the family that we are born with and all along those lines. So I guess that's one of those
Sure.
forgiveness journeys, is that
Yeah.
sometimes we, what's that old saying? You can't pick the family that you are born into, and you can't
Yep.
always pick the family that is provided to you and everything, because sometimes they can aggravate us and all along those lines. And I know that even in my own life, sometimes if financial consequences come in, I am one to go to my parents, and particularly mom, just because I know that mom will probably say yes and all along those lines if you need some financial help. Not that I won't go to dad, but I just know mom is probably the go-to first answer, because she's probably going to be quicker to say yes and everything. So I'm sure that you even get that from your kids, even though they are doing quite well. You mentioned one is that Homeland Security, and the other is a videographer. But I'm sure that there might be times that there are things that happen that they need some parental advice, or maybe even some parental guidance, or even some parental
Once in a while.
finances and everything.
Once in a while. You know, we can't control what happens to us in life, but we can control how we get through it. We can control our perspective. And as adults, you're not who you were as a kid. And I
Right.
think that's what trips everybody up, because they still think of themselves as that kid who messed up all the time. And everybody said I wasn't going to amount to anything and all these horrible things. But that's not who you are anymore. And if somebody is looking at you through those rose colored glasses because they're family members and they see you as that 16-year-old who used to mess up, and you're not that person anymore, that's their problem, not yours. Um,
Mhm.
how people see you is their problem. How you see you, that you can control. So just knowing you are not that person anymore. And every day we wake up, it's our opportunity to reinvent ourselves. We don't have to wait for January 1st. Every day is a new opportunity to say, that's it. I've had it. I'm going to change.
No,
No
but along those same
fanfare,
lines,
no book, no, trumpets, just a quiet little, I'm done.
yep. But along those same lines, there, because but when the pandemic first started, I actually need to reach back out to IPC, who is a well-known graphic artist in the sense of like cartoons and other kind of animation, and also a haiku champion, and is very active on Clubhouse and even some other platforms. I think he's on Instagram and a number of other things. But during the pandemic, he started a kind of like a cartoon oriented audio troupe that I was a part of, called the Funky Eye Puppets. And one of the things that he talked about was how we sometimes lose that childlike wonder and don't
We
necessarily
do.
want to tap into that childlike wonder as well. So that is, I hear what you're saying about definitely being responsible adults, but sometimes I think that we also, on the flip side of that, don't do a good enough job of allowing some of that childlike wonder and some of that childlike joy to stay into our life as well. But I just wanted your take on that, because that's something that I enjoy doing and might even get back involved in 2024 with playing these voices of different characters and all along those lines. I think mine was called Echo and all in that space. But I was just wondering your thoughts around childlike involvement, because as soon as we go to whatever we go to, whether it's the military, whether it's college or whatever, then all of a sudden it's all about being as adult as possible. And I think that we don't bring enough childlike enjoyment to anything from relationships to work to a number of other things. And I'm always an admirer of companies that allow play to be part of their environment.
I think people don't know what fun is.
Mm-hmm.
I ask people all the time, what brings you joy?
Right.
And 9 out of 10 people cannot answer my question.
Mm-hmm.
What's fun for you? They just kind of look at me. I watched TV last night. I think going out and having fun and doing things that bring you joy is the key to life. Childlike wonder. If you love drawing as a child, go pick up a coloring book, Color by Numbers, an adult coloring book, and just start coloring. You know, when I was talking about rose-colored glasses, I was actually referring to how people see you and your family who want to put you in that box that you've always been. So you're not that person anymore. But if you're stuck in life and you're in a 9 to 5 and you just don't know what to do, try going out and having some fun.
Mm-hmm. No,
And I'm not talking about going to a movie or watching or binge watching a series on Netflix. I'm saying fun. Go roller skate.
right.
Okay, if you're 62, you won't roller skate because I'm scared I'll break my neck. But, go out and do something fun. Go ride a horse. Go ride a bike. Do something. Go play hopscotch. Something.
Mm-hmm.
Go have some fun. Laugh. Laugh with your friends. Crack jokes. That's the key to life. I mean, Ron and I used to go into chemotherapy, and we used to be, the younger viewers won't know who this is, but we used to be George and Gracie, who are a little comedy team.
Right.
And we used to just go in and make people laugh. Why? Because it's more fun than crying.
No, I agree with you. And there's a show that we do regularly. Billy Graham does it, not the famous pastor or even members of his family and everything, but it is a motivational speaker out of Texas, African-American motivational speaker. And if you ever watch the show and see his commercial that opens the show, he is speaking at one of the African nations. I forget which one it is. It might be in Ghana or something like that. And one of the things that he brings up is, well, a couple things. He brings up the notion of he doesn't want to take all of these great ideas with him to the graveyard. And I definitely understand that and agree with him on that and along those lines. But the other thing that he says is that how can that we are told to break out of the box, but how can we break out of the box when there is really no box to break out of, and all along those lines. So that is one of his lines, is that
there is no
makes
box.
a lot of sense.
Everybody, you can't put me in a box because there is no box.
That's exactly what he says, is you can't put me in a box.
I read a meme on Facebook just yesterday, said, if you're one of those people who think the glass is half full,
Mm-hmm.
go buy a smaller glass and pour the water into that glass. There you go. Now the glass is full. I thought it was an interesting perspective.
That's a very interesting perspective, because if the glass is half full, go get a smaller glass and then it'll be a full glass and everything.
There you go. It's a matter of perspective. Think outside the box. Okay, well, I don't have a box, so there's no box for me to think outside of, because I don't fit into anybody's box.
Right. No, you definitely don't.
Never did.
Never did. And all along those, what advice would you give to folks, and we're getting ready to wind down shortly, that are thinking about writing a book? Because like you mentioned earlier, you have written about 12 of them and all along those lines. But what advice would you give for folks that are thinking about going into the notion of being an author and all along those lines? Because I've always been told that everybody has a book in them. Now, whether every book needs to be written, that's a whole nother question, and that's a whole nother story. But I have been told that everybody has a book within them and everything. But what advice would you give to folks that are thinking about writing a book?
Just start writing. One of the mistakes that people make when they think about writing a book is they think, okay, I have to come up with the title. Then I have to write the chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And that's actually not true. I really did write one of my books in chemotherapy on my phone. And what I did is, when I thought of something, I'd write it down. So I didn't know if that was chapter 1. I didn't know if it was chapter 10. So just get on your computer and just start writing. Mm-hmm. And just start writing. If you're writing a memoir about your life, you don't have to start with your childhood. Start with whatever floats into your head. Once, 3, 6 months, a year goes on, and you have enough files on your computer, okay, now you can put them in order. Now you can say, okay, well, this one should be here, and that one should be here, and that's when you can find a title for the book. So just start writing. Don't put yourself in a box and pigeonhole. Just start writing.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Would it be something similar to just go ahead and do it? Because one of the things I know a lot of people are interested in is something else that we've talked about here on this show and everything that you have been part of, which is entrepreneurship. And I know that everybody thinks that they've got the next great business idea. Now, I do get frustrated when I see people that have these great ideas and don't necessarily follow some of the basic principles that you need to have, which is like a business plan and some of the other stuff. But hey, I've also seen some businesses that were successful that were, as you just put it, out of the box, and they might not have had the business plan or even the total staff until actually the business was up and running and everything. Because literally, I don't think I mentioned this to you, but I did mention at the beginning that my parents started a radio station, and they started it when I was the year of the independence. So 1976 is when the station came on the air, and it was on till roughly 87 or 88, so about 11 or 12 years. And part of it was them being frustrated by the fact that they did not hear enough minority voices. They didn't hear enough rural voices. And they also had a love of certain music styles that they weren't hearing enough of, that being jazz and blues. So with no radio background whatsoever, mom was trained as a guidance counselor, and dad was trained in the military as an engineer, and I think in college in that field as well, but not a radio engineer, but like the more civil type of engineer, if I remember correctly. And like I said earlier, he was involved in civil rights struggle activities here in North Carolina and everything. So with no background, but seeing a need, they created it. And that's part of the reason that I like what Kim and Nick are doing here at Pod TV, because I think it's a similar narrative. Some 76 to 2006, some close to 50 years later, with similar mindset and everything, even though it's closer to like 45 years later and everything, but still a similar mindset and all along those lines. So I was like, I can definitely relate to it and want to get involved, because it sounds like what the parents, who fortunately are still living, were doing when they created that station in 76. So definitely one thing I think you have to do is have a vision. But what advice would you give to entrepreneurs?
Don't quit your day job until you can support yourself.
Right.
Everybody say, well, how much will it cost to start a business or a concierge business? Well, add up your bills, phone bill, every bill, multiply that by 6. My husband will tell you to multiply it by 9. And that's the amount of money that you need to start the business basic, because that's the amount of money you need so you don't starve to death. Mm-hmm. That's your monthly nut. That's what you need every month to survive. And if it means that you have to work part-time while you're getting the business, or you do the business at night and on weekends, you'll be the busiest person on the planet, but you're not going to starve to death, and you'll have a roof over your head. So I tell everybody to don't quit your day job. It might be $1 million business, 100%, but I don't want you to end up in a refrigerator box on the street either. I need you to do it right. You need insurance. You need a business plan. Sure, you need the business card. You need a website. Yes, you need a website. Everybody needs a website, but you need a lawyer. You need an accountant. You need insurance. You need to have enough money in the bank so you don't starve to death. That's my advice to everybody who's starting a business. And I'm not trying to talk anybody out of a dream, but I also don't want you to die.
Yeah, and I know some people will start the business literally from the business that they are in. I know that when I started Lee Entertainment, which is like kind of like entertainment planning and entertainment consulting and all along those lines, and even managed some performers, I literally was working at GlaxoSmithKline. So of course I was using some of the resources that I had access to and everything. Now, whether that was technically cheating or not, that's a whole nother matter. And maybe the folks at Glaxo need to forgive me. And all along those lines, coming back to our conversation around.
That's another conversation.
Exactly.
Let's circle back a little bit. Yeah. Yes,
exactly. They might have to forgive me for taking advantage of that. But I do know that the quite often people will take advantage of the situations that they are in, whether that is
Fun.
using a copier, whether that is using a phone, or whether that is using even office space or whatever. But definitely it does seem like that is a standard business practice where many
It is
folks are.
today. Back in the day when I was there out there, it wasn't, but today it kind of is. We live in a very different world right now. Very different world.
What's some of the things that you have seen change in your 62 years that have surprised you? Because I know on one of our shows that we oftentimes talk about AI and its impact, and all along those lines on a regular basis. I think that's our World Edition show, which is our new show. Of course, they also talk about these awards that I mentioned earlier as well. But kind of jokingly talked about the change in the phone, and of course the Google reference that
It's
you made
slam your
earlier.
phone down like I used to because you break it. You can't slam it down. Didn't we all used to think we were going to be living a George Jetson kind of life? Come on. We all thought we'd be walking, we'd be driving these cars, these, spaceship cars. That's what we all thought. And then when computers came on, they told all of us, we're going to have a paperless society. They lied through their teeth. We are not a paperless society. So I think that's the biggest change is, technology. But as much as technology has changed, our society is kind of the same way it was as it was in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. We're teaching the same things in school. It doesn't seem to me, with all due respect to everybody out there, it just doesn't look to me like we've progressed terribly far in that department. Technology, we've progressed very far. And I see AI, and I wonder if they've never seen Terminator movies or Will Smith. I mean, I wonder if they've never been to the movies. So whenever I use ChatGPT, I make a point of saying thank you to it. Why? Because if the AIs take over the world, maybe they'll remember that I was nice to it and I always said thank you.
And they might just remember that, like you said.
Maybe they'll remember. I don't know.
Yeah, hopefully they'll remember that, because as you were just saying that, I was thinking about a couple of things. One, the network founders, part of the reason that they founded the network, as I alluded to earlier, was that they felt that there were things that should be taught in the school that weren't taught in the school. Because I know Nick Valveda talks about fiscal literacy and fiscal responsibility, and he wishes that would be taught in the school system, and he can't find any school system where it is really taught, or even entrepreneurship skills as well. So I think that both him and Kim would agree with what you're saying, that we need to do a better job in our teaching and everything. And at the same time, I know that I want to say here in North Carolina, there are school systems that are concerned about the use of technology. And I think that there's even some schools that are putting limitations on when the students can bring the cell phones into the campus.
I agree with that, actually. And their students are using ChatGPT to write their papers, which is wrong. So that's something that they're going to have to figure out. So kids can't do that. They really have to think for themselves, because our cell phones, we all thought it was going to make us all smarter. I think it's made us all dumber.
Well, not only that, but I also wonder, between the cell phones and the pandemic, if some of while I'm glad to be able to talk to you on this platform and everything, and hopefully I know that we have a regular meeting sometimes with some of the people from here in North Carolina that have been on shows and everything else, that Nick brings them to the WADU, which is over there on the campus of Duke University, and we'll have lunch together and all along those lines. So I know there have been some past guests and definitely some hosts that have showed up as well. So I might have to see when the one is for January and see if you're able to come from Apex, because I know there's some people that come from Raleigh.
I'm actually outside of Wilmington. So okay. I'm about 2-3 hours away.
Yeah, but still, it might be possible and everything. I'll just the invitation and all, because I know they try to do those meetings on a monthly basis. But one of the things that I get frustrated by is how some of the social skills aren't taught as much either and everything. Because as you were alluding to earlier, even with the concierge service work that you were doing, I do know that sometimes if you go into a restaurant that's just for a sit-down meal and you see 5 or 6 people that are having a conversation and they're all using their cell phones, and sometimes in the back of my head I'm going like, why are y'all here together if y'all aren't really here together? And all of those lines, because they're all on separate phones talking to separate individuals, and I'm going like, aren't y'all all in the same place? But I didn't quite get it, but I have seen that a couple of times. But I'm sure you've even seen that in Wilmington as well.
Oh yeah. We used to make everybody, whenever I went out with people, everybody would put their cell phone in the middle of the table, and if somebody flinched, you'd have to pay the bill. And whenever I teach a workshop, I will say if I hear a phone chirp, tweet, jump, I don't care. If it makes any sound whatsoever, you have to stand up and sing the Star Spangled Banner. Make sure for all the speakers out there that you turn your own cell phone off first before you make that announcement. Happened to me once. And the only reason I got out of it is because we were going to lunch at the time. So I managed to talk my way out of it. But yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Along those same lines, Barbara Smith, who usually does the show on Thursday, I've actually got to get in touch with her and Shawnee. She used to have these like certain things that she does a show called Empowering You. It was in Thursday evenings, and now it's Thursday afternoon, and that's why I got to check and see whether we're on for this Thursday or whether she'll come back on the 11th for the first episode and all in that space. But she would oftentimes talk about kind of like catching how a lot of times when people are given an introduction to the speaker, they basically read the bio, and there's like the bio is already provided and all along those lines. So she would sometimes ask a question that would get people to break that mold. So she would sometimes say that she was, I forget the exact phrase, but it's something like I was an engineer by 8, I was a race car driver by 10, and then I was a something else by 12. And she would give backgrounds as to how this happened. So the engineer at like 8 was her literally breaking down something that was in the house and rebuilding it and all along those lines. And the race car driver was literally her, riding her parents' car or something along those lines. So there was a narrative that got the person who's doing the introduction to break out of that tried and true tradition of just reading the bio and everything. So I was wondering, how do you get people to introduce you in a way that is less stale than some of the introductions are at many speaking conferences? So like I said, that was one of Barbara's little tricks of the trade, but I was just wondering how you deal with it and how you try to get them to give something that is a little bit more vibrant.
Sometimes I'll write it for them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll just give them some verbal suggestions. Because I don't like to step on people's toes when they invite me to speak. They've got a certain format of doing things. But when I'm asked, I'll tell them, to they can say anything they want in my bio. But I'm a big fan of people can read. Mm-hmm. So I like to have it short and sweet because everybody can Google me. They can go to my website. They can read my bio. And I'm a fan of, you're not really here to hear my bio. You're you kind of want to hear what I have to say. And I feel that way about every speaker. So I try and keep them short and sweet.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Just keep them short and sweet and all along those lines. As I said, going to wrap it up, because I'm actually going to get out of this building, get back to my apartment and house and all along those lines. But one of the things I get every guest to do is, if you can tell folks that have been listening to this conversation either now, and I have seen a few people that have popped in at least on the little eyeball, as well as other ways that I'm able to know and everything. And also I will air these interviews several times during the course of the week and the month, even after they are aired. So any words of positivity and hope, because as you've learned, that's part of what I am all about, is spreading positivity and hope to the globe in whatever ways I can. So any message of positivity and hope that you would like to share with our global audience, as well as ways that you can be reached and contacted, and any messages that you haven't got out, because I think we've covered quite a bit of what I know you're about, including entrepreneurship, business, and the concierge, and being a breast cancer survivor. But anything that you would like to share that we might not have tapped into, and any message of positivity and hope, and ways that folks can reach out to you. And hopefully you'll come back even on our new show, because like I said before, we do the new show every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. And I might even send you the link for tomorrow, all along those lines. And if you want to jump in, that becomes a little bit more of a food fight, because we do have people of different political views, whereas I like to just have open conversations and not be as much of the contrast kind of things that some people do. But it's still a good show and a fun show. But I still may send you the link, and if you have the time, pop in. And if the food fight becomes too much, you are perfectly welcome to pop out as well.
If people want to purchase any of my books and you want to see what I've written, you could go to KatherineGiovanni.com. Catherine is spelled a little bit weird. It's KATHARINE, Giovanni.com. A list of my books and all the things I've written are right there. The newest one is this one, The Ultimate Path to Forgiveness. My biggest message to anybody is to be your authentic self. And I'm not being tried. I actually mean it. Everybody's trying to put us all in a box. And if you're not happy in what you're doing, it probably means that you're not being your authentic self. You're not being true to yourself. You're not doing things that make you happy. You're not being the person you know who you are. Why? Because maybe you're scared society is going to accost you. They're going to pick you. They're going to point their finger at you and say, you shouldn't do that. It's like the bullies in grammar school. Be your authentic self. It's why you're here on the planet. The only way we're going to heal the planet is if we be our authentic selves and we do what we're meant to do. Okay, Catherine, what am I meant to do? You'll figure it out. Once you decide to be your authentic self, you'll figure it out. Trust the little bird on your shoulder and know that you got this.
No, definitely. You said a couple of things that had me laughing as we're closing out and everything. One is that, and I still tease him to this day and everything, but as I mentioned before, I've always knew that I was going to be in the entertainment space and definitely the media space as well. And I remember that he doesn't do it as much now because there is a nickname that I created for myself that I actually enjoy. And I think I created it on Facebook. You might have even seen it on LinkedIn, which is the Cultural Minister of Durham, because I'm definitely involved in a lot of cultural activities here in Durham. So I created that and everything. And I think it was actually some friends of mine that came up with that term because they were like, every time we see you, you're at something cultural. So they were a little bit on the more left side of politics. So they were like, you must be the Cultural Minister of Durham. So I kind of stuck with that and kept that even on some of my social media outlets and all in that space. But my dad, when I was young and everything, he used to sarcastically call me a showbiz. So that would sound his way of being sarcastic and all along those lines. So I was going like, yeah, but
sounds like a compliment to me.
Exactly. And I took it as a compliment and I also took it as a kind of a part of the trademark and some of the things that I do as well. So at the time, he was being a little bit sarcastic in the way he phrased it because it was kind of done in a sarcastic tone and all, but I took it as a compliment and have used it as a compliment ever since that time and everything. So that's just something that I found that you can flip what somebody may intended to be one way into a more positive light, and if you choose to and everything.
Yeah, they say they're calling you showbiz. Say thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
And the little side entertainment, you run the risk of irritating them, which might be very entertaining, to be honest. So there you go, little side entertainment.
Little side entertainment, and it might even, like you said, if they're using it one way and then you flip it and everything, because I know that there are some women, including one of our founders, Kim Calhoun, that sometimes will use a word that is associated with certain animals, namely the dog and everything, but also associated with a certain part of our culture and everything, and rhymes with that word. And she basically will try to reclaim the word by using it as part of acronyms and all along those words. So that's another case.
I'm from New York, and I live with somebody who grew up in Hoboken, New Jersey. So yeah, I've heard it all.
Yeah, I'm sure you heard it all along those. One thing that I have enjoyed about our conversation this afternoon, before we totally wrap in everything, is I love your animal references, because I'm a big fan of animals. Don't have any animals at the moment, but I've had cats in the past. I've had definitely even some geckos that, ironically, a friend of mine that moved to New York gave me, because they were of the Italian background, as I recall, and they were going up there to move into the theater district. So even though I only had them for less than a year, they gave me fettuccine, linguine, and Alfredo. So I had those three geckos that I was able to keep for a while, because they had very many geckos. I think he had like 10 or 12, but I got 3 of them as they were going up to New York to pursue their theater career. And then as a kid, I've had rabbits and even a pet raccoon and a number of other things. And I heard your references to things like the jackrabbits in your life and a couple of other things. I'm good, like, she must have a love of animals.
Animals are smarter than us. They blindly trust their intuition. Humans are stupid because we don't blindly trust our intuition. We talk back to it and say, you're out of your mind. I'm not going to do that. But animals, they blindly trust it. They're 100% smarter than we are.
No, I agree with you. I think that animals are much smarter, and I think that sometimes they are also wondering why we do what we do. I had a friend of mine that got one of those, and she was a cat lover and still is a cat lover to this day. And she got one of those little light switches that you sit there and you try to get the cat to do tricks with and everything. And I think the cat might have done, as a kitten, the trick for like maybe less than an hour, and then the cat was like, no, I figured out the game. I'm not playing it anymore. So
I have a cat. She looks at you, it's like, you want me to do what?
You want me to play that game? I know that game. I'm not doing that. And similarly, they are very smart because when I did have, well, I've had several cats, but not in these since last year when I was cat sitting for some neighbors and all in that space. And I'd had one of my own for a number of years. But I remember one of the cats I had literally used to run and would be chased by the dogs up the trees and kept being chased up the tree. And at some point, the cat, to that intuition point that you were talking about, got smart and was like, wait a minute, I don't have to play this game
Yeah.
anymore. So the cat literally turned around, swiped the dog's nose, and as I recall it, I don't think those dogs ever chased that cat again because the cat was like, "I'm tired of this game. I don't want to play the game anymore."
They're smarter than us. When I can't remember, about 10 years ago, there was a huge tsunami. I think it was in Thailand or someplace over in Asia. And there's a story goes that, and this is true, you can Google it. I just don't remember when it was. The elephants, they were trusting their intuition and they were grabbing their keepers and trying to drag them to higher ground. And the keepers were humans and say, what are you doing? It's a beautiful day. Why do you want us to go up there? The elephants saved everybody. Because they knew the tsunami was going. How? They trusted their intuition. Their brains didn't talk them out of it.
No, and along those same lines, yeah, and along those same lines, we can go back to something that is now over 20 years ago. But when 9/11 happened, and all along those lines, and I brought it up on this show and other shows as well. I used to go to a friend's art gallery. Another friend has a similar art space in that building right now. I think he might be having to move because of some renovations and everything. But I remember we would have regular conversations in downtown Durham before all of the gentrification and all of the development. And we would see all kinds of animals, birds around,
Yep.
even animals that you didn't want to see and everything. And to this day, I have talked to people, including people from New York City, that I have asked them this. And I said, after 9/11 happened, how many animals did you see? And to almost a man and a woman, most of them have agreed with what I remember, which is that the animals got the feeling that humans are about to get stupid, so they disappeared for a while. So
They
I've talked
peaced
to
out,
people.
man. They left.
They left. They were like,
Peace out, man. Yeah.
they were like, we threw y'all folks got to get stupid. So even people that like the pigeons in New York, when I talked with my friends in New York, they're like, I don't remember seeing any pigeons for at least a day or two. They were like, we're done.
No, because humans, we talk ourselves out of it, don't we? We will question what our intuition is saying, leave. And you're like, why? I'm comfortable. I don't want to leave. And you kind of think you're crazy. You're kind of, why do I have this feeling I should leave? Okay, well, animals don't question it. They just leave.
They just leave and
They just leave. They don't question it.
They don't
You
question
learn a
it.
lot from animals.
Yeah, we definitely, and I think we even learned it during the pandemic. Because the other story that I remember people talked about was how when we were locked in, then the animals realized that we were locked in, and they were like, "Well, we can be more free." So there was the whole example of animals that had not been seen in like the canals of Italy and other places.
Oh,
Where
I
they were
remember
like,
that watching that. Yeah, in Venice, and all the animals were coming back,
mhm.
and the air quality got better.
Yeah, everything got better because the animals were like, "Hey, the humans are locked in the house, so we can go enjoy our freedom and everything."
Yeah.
Well, like I said, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Went about the times that they usually go, which is somewhere around an hour and a half to 2 hours. And I hope that you will come back, and I will send you that link for tomorrow. And if you get a chance, pop in. And some of the shows are multiple guests, and sometimes it's just one-on-one, as this has been. So hopefully you'll make a return trip either on tomorrow's news or on another online dinner party. But I'll keep sending you links, and whenever you are able to pop in, please do. And one of the things we've been doing is we've been adding, because we have a bookstore, a bookstore that is the books of folks, because I'm considered an Amazon influencer for whatever reason, because I don't even know how I got that title. But since Amazon gave me the title, I'm not going to argue. So Pod TV has attached my bookstore to their network and everything. So I have like the idea list. So I'll be adding yours as well. So hopefully, who knows, we might even get some purchases of your books from some of our listeners that have heard this conversation. So I'll be adding those this evening as soon as I get to the house and everything. Don't know that I'll add all 12, but I'll add at least the current one and maybe 3 or 4 other ones that look interesting, including some of the concierge ones as well. And who knows, I might even get bored and add all 12.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem at all. Catherine, you have been a great joy to talk to, and all along those lines. So I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully I didn't drive you too crazy with some of my inane questions and all along those lines. But
You're
I was
good.
having fun, and I hope you were enjoying as well. And I'm going to end with a couple of Friends commercials, including one that honors the folks that are, and this was from, I think, a few years ago, but honor those in the teaching profession that aren't honored enough. The janitors and the guidance counselors and stuff, those folks in somewhere in the Midwest. I can't remember. I think it might be Oklahoma, that this gentleman created this award show. And actually, Barbara won one of the awards last year and everything. So they are honoring people that are both the teachers as well as those that are the support staff with the teachers, like guidance counselors and janitors and others as well. So I'll be ending that, as well as another Friends company that deals with financial services. We're talking about the importance of finances and all in that space. So that's how we'll get on out of here. But I definitely look forward to seeing you in the near future.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it, Mark.
No problem. Have a good one.
Are you looking for money-saving strategies for your business and personal finances? Are you tired of working hard every day with little or nothing to show for it? Contact Prosperity Financial Services, LLC right now for your free financial consultation. Call now to reserve yours today, 804-349-8600, 804-349-8600.
I want to thank everyone for coming to the 2020 TAF Awards. This was a show like no other, people. This is the Grammys for dignitaries, educators, and support staff around the state of Oklahoma and worldwide. We cannot do this without the support of the people. So we thank you, I thank you, for being such a dedicated supporter to this movement for the Teachers Appreciation Foundation. I thank you.